All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarmad, and today with me, Dr. Ahmed Mahrous. He's a clinical assistant professor at the Department of Prosthodontics at the University of Iowa, College of Dentistry. Dr. Mahrous received his BDS from Pharaoh's University College of Dentistry in Egypt in 2011, sorry. In 2016, he received his master in prosthodontics from Iowa and also became an assistant professor in the Department of Prosthodontics. In 2018 and 2019, dental students awarded Dr. Mahrous D2 and D3 Faculty of the Year. And in 2019, he was also recognized as faculty of all 4 years. Congratulations, Dr. Mahrous.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for taking the time of your schedule to do this with me today. So do you want to start with saying anything about you first before I start asking you a couple of questions?
No, thank you for having me over. It's nice to do these kind of things from time to time. So yeah, no, go ahead and ask away. I'll
Okay.
answer.
So actually, I was talking to one of my colleagues, my classmates, and we were all wondering, like, how did you end up in Iowa, and how did you come to Iowa from Egypt?
Yeah, it's a big shift, especially considering the weather. You know, you're used to a hot climate where I'm from, and you come to Iowa, and it's reaching levels of temperatures you can't even imagine. So yeah, it's interesting. But my father is also a prosthodontist, and he did his PhDs here in Iowa. So after I was done with dental school, we had and you know, I could tell you the story of that too, but me and Amira had planned on pursuing further dental education, and Amira wanted to do it here. So anyway, we did our boards and all that, and we can get into the details later if you'd like.
Yeah.
But when I was applying for postgraduate programs in pros, you might be familiar with the pass and match system.
Yes.
Where you apply to a certain area and they send all your documents to all the other places. So I was doing that, and Iowa was not part of the match. So I remembered I was sitting down on the dining room table, and I had all the papers in front of me, and I was applying to everything. And my dad walked in. He was with me then, and then he came in, and then he said, so you're applying to Iowa, right? I'm like, well, it's not in the pass, so I'll have to do a separate application just for Iowa. And he's like, well, you've got to do it. It's like one of the best. And I knew it was a great school. I didn't want to do another set of paperwork just for one school. But he ended up being very persistent, and I said, all right, I'll do it. And we went through. I mean, it was fine. I applied to it, and then you wait for the responses. And I got at first I got an interview. I don't remember the dates exactly, but I got an interview in one of the states very early on. And I went there, and then as I was doing the interview, I get the email for an interview in another state. So I was planning on just going back home after that interview, but then I had to wait. And so I went there, and then the same thing happened again. And then after the third school, I got the email for Iowa to come to interview. So I rescheduled my flight for the third time and went to Iowa. And when I came here, you know, I kind of realized why my father liked it. It's a very nice learning institution and learning state. I mean, really, it's very easy to move around. It's very accessible. You can get everything and anything within, you know, usually usually within walking distance, but if you'll drive, it'll also be a very short drive. And then it's relatively inexpensive, and healthcare is really good, and it's also a safe place to be. So all that was really nice, and I think compared to the other areas that I had interviewed, it checked all the boxes.
Yeah.
After I was done with the interview, back then, because Iowa wasn't a pass and match, you essentially get a phone call telling you that you're accepted, and they'll give you a little window in which you have to make a choice whether you'll come or not. Now I had already been contacted by the first school saying that they wanted me to go, and they were waiting for my response. I had to make a decision right then, and it was a clear decision to me. I think Iowa was the best choice. Now, I did come here in the spring, so I didn't know how it would feel like in the winter, and obviously it was a big shocker. Obviously, because I'm not used to snow, it was a nice surprise to find snow and touch it and walk in it and all that. But then obviously, once the snow stays for a little bit, it becomes more of a something you have to deal with. But it's Iowa is one of the nicest places to see all the seasons. So you get to see the winter change into fall, change into summer, change into spring, and it's nice. It's a nice change of scenery every now and then.
Yeah, that's true. I really appreciate that too. Like it's kind of back home in Iraq, we don't have like the seasons transitions. It's really good to see the all four seasons. Sorry for interruption, but I like that. I agree with you. Totally agree with you.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, and then I came in for my pros residency, and Amira had decided the plan was to get married and then come here. So we had just been getting married, and obviously for me, the things I had to plan were essentially my suit, and that's it. But for Amira, she had so many things she wanted to choose from and to micromanage. She didn't have time to apply for anything. So we decided that I'm going to apply that first, and then she can apply later after I'm here. We didn't know which state I was going to end up in. So this is how we kind of decided to do it. And so she applied the year after.
She applied later on. Okay.
And then she joined operative the next year. So, yeah.
Is there an option in dentistry if you have a spouse who's in dentistry, you can apply for matching together, or because I know that in medicine they have that.
When I was applying, and that was 7 years ago, there wasn't really an option for like selecting a spouse. But once you're here, I think they take that into consideration. So if you are currently a student and you have a spouse who is also wanting to be a student, then they take that into consideration. And that's what happened to me. It happened to other people that I know as well. It becomes something that they need to think about, especially once they have someone that is here currently and they're pursuing a degree, and they're going to be here for a while. They would like to have their spouse also accommodated. And I know most places do this, but the one I can tell you for sure that I do is here.
Yeah. So what's made you choose a pros?
Yeah, and that's a question that I get asked a lot, because pros isn't what you would call an easy subject for most people.
Yeah.
It's usually a subject that is not a very easy thing to do, and I agree. And it's even harder to plan and to understand, like treatment sequences and things like that. And that, I think, is one of the biggest deficiencies when you get out of dental school. So if you're in dental school, you're usually given cases that are good to go. or that are simple enough to start with one or two things. It's the complicated cases that you usually don't end up seeing. They're usually taken and given to someone else who is more experienced. So when you graduate from dental school, your treatment planning skills in terms of like a bigger treatment are very limited. And this is how I felt when I was getting close to my final years in dental school. I felt like, I'm okay with doing like a crown, a bridge, and you can tell me, okay, this tooth needs a crown, I can do that. But if it's a complicated case, I find myself just lost.
Yeah.
And this is the problem that I found myself in dental school. And because of that, I started to think about, okay, how would I, if I'm in practice, how would I improve that? And one of the things that I thought about was PROS. I mean, PROS does give you a bird's eye view of the general treatment for any patient. So if a patient comes to you with a missing tooth or a missing, set of teeth, you're not only thinking of how you're going to put these teeth in, but you're also thinking of the surrounding tissues, the surrounding teeth, the opposing teeth, the patient's bite, the patient's other needs, health needs. All these things, you're putting them together and you're orchestrating that treatment plan so that in the end, you'll have a prosthetic that fits in with all the other things. So, if treatment planning is something that you're interested in or you feel like you are deficient in, I feel like prosthodontics is one of the biggest things that you can invest in to learn these kind of things. And I think this is what happened to me. Throughout your pros residency, you've got these big, complex cases.
Yeah.
And, at first when you look at them, you're like, how would you even start with something like this? But then you sit with your faculty and you see how they approach these and you learn from them as they go through the cases. It's almost like the best way I can explain it is if you've got a very messy desk and you want to organize that desk and you're looking at that desk and thinking, oh my God, there are papers everywhere there's some food stuck there. There's like things that are not clean. How am I gonna end up with a nice looking desk? And then, you start filtering out the things that you don't need and then organizing the things that are there and putting them, and then you're trying to imagine how it would look like that. In a dental perspective is exactly what prosthodontics does in complex cases. You take that case and you try to start with the things that you don't need and you take those out, and then you have a vision of where you want to end up and you try to connect the dots until you get there. Yeah. And it becomes almost like after you get used to it, it becomes more like a puzzle or a game that you're trying to solve. And it becomes fun. And there's a saying that I always say when someone was like, most pros residents are really tired and they're really miserable and they're like, is this going to get better? And I tell them, here's the thing. I mean, most of the times you enjoy the things that you're good at. It's like playing a video game. If you're playing a video game and you keep losing, you don't like it because you lose at that game. You feel like you don't want to play it because every time you play it, you lose. But if you learn to play it and you eventually become good at it, then you really love that game. Then you're asking people, hey, come play it because I win at that game. And that's kind of how a residency feels like. When you start off, you're learning, and and the nature of learning is that you're being told something you're doing is wrong. You need to learn to do it the right way. And that feeling isn't nice, the feeling that you're not doing something the correct way. Eventually though, when you start making things correct, you start liking it. And this is kind of how the residency feels like. You're doing things that in the end up with a very satisfying prosthetic for your patient. And usually the things we do are very life-changing, especially full mouth rehabilitations, things like that. they end up changing a person's life. And that impact, I feel, is kind of addictive. I mean, once you've gotten a taste of changing someone's life to the better, you want to feel that again. You want to feel like you're changing that again. And it is an amazing feeling. And if you've ever done a simple thing, just like a denture, you really see the effect it has on the patient. And, chasing that feeling is really one of the best feelings in our profession, I feel.
So did you you had this feeling when you were in dental school or after dental school, when you were in residency?
Yeah, in my residency, you feel that satisfaction, and in dental school, you feel the satisfaction of giving a patient something that changes their life. And really, in residency, this is probably your biggest incentive, because you're not really being paid much, and you're very tired because you're working almost the whole day. I mean, in prosthodontics, you've got to do your own lab work, so you're waking up at night to do the lab work, and then again in the morning to do the treatments, and it's almost like you're doing two jobs.
Yeah.
So it's a very physically demanding program, but the results of the things you do are just immense. And I would say it feels even better when you're a resident, because it's something that you've done with your own hands, and you feel like you'll remember the hours that you spent making that prosthetic, and manufacturing it with your own hands, and to see it in a patient's mouth functioning, and that patient is very thankful for it. It is a great feeling. It feels like you have truly influenced someone's life to the better. And I feel like if I were to choose one thing to get out of our profession, it would be that feeling. Obviously, you need the money to live, but this is the best thing that I feel our profession gives the user. That feeling of impacting a patient's life.
Thank you for that. That very informative information. So then after you graduated, I mean, we noticed you in the sim clinic that you showed us the digital, the 3D models and the digital dentistry. When did that come from? Where did that come from? Like the interest focused of on digital dentistry came from?
Yeah. So digital dentistry as a general term, meaning your scanners, your milling machines or printing machines, digital planning, all this is fine. This is things that we actually do, and we're constantly looking at ways to incorporate it into the curriculum. And as dentistry evolves, some of the older things that were done are really not going to be mainstream anymore. And in dental education, you have to always keep up with those. So that's digital dentistry by the definition that most dentists would know. Now, the things that I've been doing in my teaching are, I guess you can consider them digital dentistry, but they're more just educational tools that you would use to make learning a little easier. And that involves 3D models as a tool to show people things that is easier to understand than a picture or a piece of text. Maybe having a movie of some sorts, or animations that would showcase something specific. I think the technology as a whole is there. I mean, you'd see it anytime you would open up a marketing video for like dental implants or crowns. You always see these animations and really cool models that are being rotated in front of you so you can see them. And it is just marketing people know what they're doing. They're giving you something that is easy to understand. And when you understand something that's in an easy way, you're more likely to want to get it. And unfortunately in education, there really isn't that incentive to make for a faculty to make their lectures easier to understand. It's easier just to say, hey, I'm going to try to explain it as best as I can, and you're going to have to learn it just like I did when I was a student.
Yeah.
But honestly, I felt the need to improve lectures even for my own benefit. If I have to stand there and try to explain it, it's much harder than just showing you what I'm trying to explain.
Yeah.
And this is, this was the incentive for me to look for an alternative or look for an improvement. And it all started with just PowerPoint. And PowerPoint is just a very basic software, but if used right, you can do pretty good things with it. And that's what I invested my time in. And I was as a high schooler and younger as a child, I was very into just video games in general, and dinosaurs like all the other kids. But I took it a little bit more seriously. I thought that if they can do dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, I should be able to do them too. And I looked up like modeling softwares. That was back in the late 90s and 2000s. I was like a very young kid, but we had this very old computer. I mean, it was new at the time, but it was old compared to today's standards. And I thought, hey, I can download that software and try to play with it a little bit. And I started. There weren't any YouTube videos back then. There wasn't YouTube, so there's no way of really having someone explain to you how to do these things. And really no one around me knew how to. The software I downloaded was Maya, and I had known about that software because I was playing a video game called God of War, and that was, I don't know if you guys know about this, but it was a
I'm
very
not
good
a video gamer. I'm not.
Yeah, but anyway, after you beat the game, there's an unlockable video that explains to you how they made the game. And the guy mentioned it. One of the developers mentioned it, like, oh, they used Maya software to do these things. I was like, oh, maybe I'll try that. And I downloaded it and I kept playing with it, and I was able to sculpt a dinosaur out of that.
Oh.
And it took a long time to learn it, but back in the day of school, you really had a lot of time in the summer to do these things. And, this is what interested me. So I just spent the time to do it. And then I would also try to create these trailers for imaginary movies, like with dragons and things like that in PowerPoint. And, I learned the animations and all the sequencing and all that. And that was, I did it for myself. It was my own enjoyment. And little did I know that these skills would come in handy when I'm a faculty. That was I don't know, 20 years later. And I didn't really think about these things, but this is really what I leaned on when I started working. When I started thinking about, okay, how can I improve the delivery of that information? I went back to my, school days when I used to do these trailers, and I was like, I remember doing these things. And that was, a very early version of PowerPoint and a very rudimentary version of that 3D modeling software. And now there's YouTube. It obviously, if you have the basics, it's nice, but you always want to learn more. And with these outlets and the internet, it's so much easier now.
Yeah.
But that's really what made me think of going that route. So it started with PowerPoint, again, making animations that would make things easier to understand. And I saw really good feedback from the students. And like when you were reading my bio, yes, it says I get these Faculty of the Year awards, and I don't think it's necessarily because of my personality. It's mainly because I'm giving the students something that they learn from, that is easy to understand. And again, these are tools that we all have, but no one really thinks of using to their fullest extent.
I think student likes you. too.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
Because
I-
we talked about that, and they liked you really very much.
Oh, thank you so much. But honestly, I like to think that really it is the effort that you put in to the work that you do, um, and if it is the work that makes people succeed in what they need to do. I mean, I'm a teacher, and that's what I'm a dentist, and I'm a dental teacher. So I need to use these skills to help dentists learn. And,
Mhm.
if I'm not doing that to my full extent, then, I'm not really doing my job. So again, this is part of the things that I started thinking about as I was a new faculty. And little by little, I started to do some, and you find that there's a very good response from the students, and then you do more, and you find that
Mhm.
it's better. There's better response, and it once you get a hang of it, you start to identify what are the holes in the learning of a student, and how can you deliver it in a way that would make learning easier. And that just I've been teaching for this will be my 5th year now, and
Mhm.
every year I keep adding more things and
Yeah.
expanding the things that I'd like to do. And again, it is something that I enjoy, and that's another feedback loop. And I talked to you about how doing prosthodontics with patients and the feedback you get is really the gem of that profession. Again, I'm doing 2 professions. I'm a dentist, I'm a prosthodontist, but I'm also a teacher. So creating these things and seeing their effect on students and how it helps them understand, honestly, is again, another very addictive feeling. It is
Yeah.
something that you really chase. And a lot of times I walk through the clinics as I'm covering, and I see someone, without knowing, just opening up my lectures and looking at the steps again. I really like seeing this. He doesn't know I'm seeing him, but I just see that going on. And I feel like, yeah, I've created something that this student has remembered and is going back to it to remember, and that's helping him. And that feeling of that you have done something that is helping other people is, I think, um, is the real benefit, or the real prize of working. Yeah, the monetary benefit is great, but that that feeling that you're doing something that is helping people is, again, in prosthodontics and in teaching, is a very good feeling that really I value the most.
So, do you have a YouTube channel? So, in case people doesn't know what we're talking about, so I can link it in the description. You have a YouTube channel, right?
I do have a YouTube channel. It's you'll find different things on there, not all dentistry. There are
Okay.
some dentistry, some of my video gaming there as
Oh,
well. But if you really want to see just the dental things,
I mean, it's
you might
fine.
want
I
to go
think if
into my
people,
Instagram. And
okay, so maybe I will take the information after this, and so I can link all the information in the description
yeah,
part of the video. Yeah, this
Instagram
is interesting.
is much more professional. It's got mainly dental things.
Oh,
Yeah, again, you're free to go into the YouTube channel, and I have no problem with that. You'll just
okay.
see some footage of video games there. So if you're
I
really
mean, I think
expecting,
people would like it. Cool. I think they will enjoy it. So you didn't take any like a professional training on coding, like editing, like making these 3D models and
no, not really. And honestly, um, some of some of it is very intuitive. It's not really
yeah.
hard, but the other thing that I feel has helped me out with this is, um, and again, it might seem very silly, but
Mm.
this is really what ended up helping me. There's a video game called Skyrim, and I don't know, many people like it because and know it because it's a very good game, and it came out 2011, and I remember this year because I was studying for my boards. I think it was part 1 or part 2. I don't remember which one. And I remember seeing the trailer, and I had been really not playing video games for a very long time during dental school. I didn't have enough time to play video games, but closer to the end, and that was the summer vacation, but I used it to study for my boards. I remember seeing the trailer and I thought to myself, oh, that looks like a pretty sweet game. It's got dragons, it's got an open world. And I was like, well, my computer isn't really a gaming computer. I'll try downloading it and I'll see if it works. And I downloaded it and it worked. And I remember that it was a struggle because I knew I had to study, but there was this game, and it's a feeling that I hadn't felt since I was a kid, that wanting to play a video game again. And it just kind of brought me back. Now, the main thing I'm coming to is that game was so good that even now, 10 years later, getting close to 11, people still play it. And they play it because of what we call modifications, or mods for short. They're essentially coders that go in and change the code of the game or change 3D models of the game to upgrade the textures and upgrade the graphics. So, being in love with the game as I was, I kept wanting to improve the game and make it look better and play better. So I started getting into modifying this game. And it really just a passion project of the community of that game. And in doing so, I found myself just following directions of writing these, weird lines, and, and I didn't know it was, but it was coding. And I didn't know what it was. I just, I know that to do this, you have to alter these lines and make them say these things. And, doing this for 10 years, I started understanding these lines and understanding what they meant, and understanding, oh, this is changing that. And if you write it in that way, then it changes this. So I did not know any of this. I didn't know that this was coding. I just thought this is modding the game. And so when I started, I think it happened around last year, where I started getting into just getting YouTube videos of these, virtual reality and augmented reality applications. And, I got interested in this. I felt it was so interesting that we have these things now. And I started looking at them, and I saw a few YouTube videos of people making the application on, on the screen. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is very much like modding a game. And I was like, is this coding? I guess it is. That's kind of how this came about. And, with just a little tinkering, I was able to understand the main concepts. Again, it's very similar to modding a video game. Another very unexpected benefit that I had. Yeah. And I never, when I was playing a game or modifying it, I was playing. This was my downtime. This was my, my leisure time. I wasn't educating myself. Yeah. But again, and you've got to wonder again, once it's all said and done, it's kind of the chicken and the egg kind of scenario. I mean, I don't know if I did the things I did because I had that base knowledge of the things that I learned in my life, or I learned these things and that's why I was able to do these things, the things that I do now. It's, I feel like it's more just a consequence. I mean, you're usually going to use the tools that you have at your disposal to do what you can in your life. Yeah. And, I feel like, yes, I could have stayed and taught myself coding, but at this point it would be work. And I am working and I need the leisure time. So I probably wouldn't enjoy teaching myself how to code. But it just happened as a consequence of my leisure time in the past. And, you find use for these talents in your profession. And so this goes for everyone. I mean, all of us have our own lives that we've led, and we've gained all these skills that are different from anyone else. I think finding a place for them in your work is great, because then it stops feeling like work. If you're doing the things that you're enjoying, in your work, then it really doesn't feel like work. And again, that's part of the enjoyment I get from lecturing. Again, I talked to you about how I like to do these PowerPoint trailers, and I enjoyed doing them because it felt like I was creating a movie. I was directing a movie. And that's exactly what happens in my lectures. I sequence them so it's like a movie. And I like doing this. I remember, knowing Steven Spielberg when I was just a child, and wanting to be a director of movies when I was that young. And it was something that I enjoyed, creating a story, creating a narrative, doing that, giving that experience to another person and watching them enjoy it is, again, a very, very rewarding feeling. So it might not seem like it at face value when you look at, it's a prosthodontist teaching in a dental school, that it is it's a passionate job. But to me, it really is. I'm really doing all the things that make me happy in my job, and it does feel like it's not a job. I feel happy to do these things because they are things that I enjoy. So when I get these rewards and awards, it's such a blessing because I really am enjoying it just by doing it. And to get an award for it is just the cherry on top, because you feel like, yes, I'm enjoying this, and people are enjoying it as well, and it's just a really, really nice feeling.
That's amazing. This is the best thing. Like, if you like enjoy the things that you do, it's at the same time you get paid from it. That's the best feeling. I totally agree with that. So do you still, this is probably a question for gamers out there. Do you still play video games, and what's your favorite game to
Oh
play?
yes, definitely. I definitely still do. And the concept here is, everyone has the things that they like to do. And some
Yeah.
people like to play cards. Some people like to go out for a drive. Some people like to travel. Um,
Some
you know,
people like to do woodwork.
some people like to do woodwork,
That's
manual.
me.
Everyone has their hobby, and they're it's almost, you can consider these hobbies as part of your work, because if you don't give yourself what you want every now and then,
Mhm.
and if you don't have a little bit of a balance between your work and your leisure, you will not be able to function in your work as good as you want to. So it's almost a requirement to take time for yourself if you want to continue to be good at what you do. So if you're, I think, as you grow older, you have kids and you have responsibilities, you start thinking, oh, I really shouldn't be wasting time doing these things that I like to do, or I really shouldn't be taking time off of my work or my responsibility to do these things. But you really do, because without taking that time for yourself, you're not going to be able to enjoy the things that you do otherwise, and perform as good as you can in doing these things. So I really view this leisure time as a required time for you to regenerate your passion and regenerate your interest and regenerate your energy, so you can function better doing the things that you need to do.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Uh,
I definitely still gain, and yeah, it's hard to find a good time to do that. But I'm either waking up early or staying up a little later, and yeah, I mean, my son is all around me. So if I want to play a video game, and I usually like to play story-driven games, and again, it's part of my interests to see a story and watch the
okay.
delivery of it and experience that. So if I want to really enjoy it, I really need to have some peace and quiet. And with my 5-year-old on the top of my head and spinning around me, I really can't do that with him awake. So I have to do this either early morning when he's still sleeping, or after he's gone to bed.
Oh, does he play any video games with you or no?
Actually, he does. I still like Pokemon, and Pokemon
Oh.
was out there when I was a kid, and it's still around. And when he
Hmm.
got into that age of liking it, I still like it. Yeah, I didn't grow out of Pokemon. I still like it. So I had the cards and I had some old games, but he just got so interested in it, and we got new games. And so
Oh,
I
nice.
play some of those with him, and it's such a nice bonding moment when we're both, doing things, and we get into these challenges and we win them together. It's a really nice, bonding
Yeah,
session that we do together. So that's really nice.
that's really nice. Uh, so, uh, so what a thing that you wish you had known about dentistry before, like now, you wish you have known about it in the past about
Um,
dentistry.
yeah. So one of the things that I'll talk about, I'll talk about the residency, and I feel like one of the things that, because again, my view is going to be a little biased because my father was a dentist, so I
Yeah.
had a pretty good idea of what dentistry was before getting into it. But the residency was was an exhausting experience. It was really, really hard. And it's, I don't know what to say, but if I would have known that it was that hard, I might not have done it, but I do want to do it. And
Hmm.
so it, I guess in that kind of scenario, it might be like ignorance is bliss, where if you didn't know it's that hard, I got into it, and because I did, I am who I am right now.
Hmm.
So um, I feel like dentistry as a profession, I had a pretty good idea of what it was. Residency as a training program, I just didn't know how hard it was going to be. It
Hmm.
is physically demanding because you need to, stay awake very long stretches of time and function at a very optimal level, even when you're tired. And you're talking doing this every day, every week, every month for 3 years. It gets, it gets really exhausting. So, you know, it was something that I did not know how hard it was going to be. But
Yeah.
again, I come back and say, like, if I had known, I might have changed my mind. And if I had changed my mind, I might not have been here right now. So, um,
Yeah.
I really don't wish I had known anything that I didn't know back then. I feel like, um, you know, one of the things I like to quote as a as a general life lesson
Hmm.
is a quote from Another Unexpected Place, Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. If you've ever seen the movie,
We were I was with my one of my friends yesterday. We were watching it yesterday.
okay, so you should know. So, so there was a scene where after Frodo got the ring, and it's a very bad ring, and that ring needs to go all the way to the enemy's base and needs to be thrown into the fire. It's a very hard journey, a very demanding journey, and it's something that he was a simple kid just living his life in peace, and now he's got this ring, and it's his responsibility, and he needs to take it to the harshest place imaginable. And he, at one point, he just felt like he really didn't want to do this, so he went up to Gandalf. Gandalf is a very wise wizard, and he was assisting him in the journey. So he came up to Gandalf and he said, I wish I had never gotten this ring. I wish I had never done anything, and I really don't want that responsibility. And Gandalf told him to the effect of, you know, this is not for you to decide. All that you have to decide is what to do with the time that has been given to you. And this is really a quote that I value so much, because a lot of times we waste our energy and our time thinking, why did this happen? Or why am I in this situation? And again, this is not for you to decide. These things happen and life happens. All that you have to decide is what to do in the moment that you're doing this. And again, it translates into prosthodontics, because you can say, you know, if someone were to ask you, what's the most important step in prosthodontics? You would say, it's the step that you're at right now. Because if you pay attention to every step that you're at, then you would have paid attention to all the steps that you're doing. And this is, again, it works in prosthodontics just as good as it works in life. Because if you pay attention to all the steps that you're doing in life and all the steps that you are making in life, you will not regret the decisions that you make. And, you know, again, things happen that are unexpected. Things happen that you did not plan for. But this, again, is not for you to decide. All you have to decide is what to do. Again, Gandalf, in the time that has been given to you. So again, I get back to the point where what I wish I had known, I really don't. I mean, you know, you're faced with these situations, and you really just need to take the best action that you can at that point of time. And you know, if you try to stick by these rules, then I think you'll have the least amount of regret. It happens. I mean, we make mistakes, but you know, you try to live by these rules. That's at least what I try to do.
Yeah. So a lot of like jobs right now is changing because of automation. And do you see that it can impact dentistry in a good or a bad way? Automation.
Yeah, sure. It's for sure, and it's already started. I mean, you look at dental implants, for example. There are already robotic implant placement. I mean, they call them robot-assisted implant placement, but it really is being placed by the robot. So you've got an arm that's holding the handpiece, a mechanical robot arm, and that arm is holding the handpiece that's holding the drill. And using the same technology that we already have, which is the 3D model of the tooth and the CBCT of the arch, the computer and the plan that you make, the computer already knows where to put this. So they would have a reference point and they would track it, and that implant and the arm would know where to go. So essentially all the surgeon is doing is holding that handpiece and pushing it down, but it's restricting his movement. So if he tries to go any other direction, it stops them. So, I mean, do you really just need a motor to push it down? That's kind of the thing. I mean, it's essentially doing it. It's just like you would say the automatically driving cars. They tell you have to put your hands on the wheel, but you're really not doing much. It's driving and you're just putting your hands on the wheel. So there's still that layer of distrust between the machine and the human, but it's only going to get better. It's going to improve. And yes, there are things that I feel are good about this, but there are also fears. I mean, the biggest fear that everyone's talking about is, okay, well, if the robots are doing all the jobs, what are we going to do? Yeah. And that is definitely a fear. Now, as a prosthodontist, I'm not too worried because someone needs to plan this. And generally speaking, there are things that artificial intelligence that can plan these things. And I'm personally working on one of them with a colleague. But again, it's always going to need a human input to fine tune, to customize. A lot of what we do is very personal. I mean, you're doing a denture for a patient, or you're making a prosthetic for a patient. They tell you things that a machine might not understand, like that tooth looks so-and-so, or that makes me look that way, or things like this. And these are very human feelings that could be translated into machines, but it'll take far longer. At this point, emotions aren't something that you can really teach. And so yes, we're getting to the phase of where diagnosis and some treatments can be done robotically, but you're still going to be treatment planning and customizing treatments for patients the old way. I mean, it's just a human thing that you need to do, but it's going to happen. I mean, eventually it's going to happen. Teaching, I mean, this coronavirus was an example of how teaching can be done completely virtually, but again, in dentistry, you still need to use your hands. So you still need to be here. But then a big question becomes whether this adds up to happiness. I mean, especially with teaching. I mean, people do not like the isolation, and that's just a fact. So whether we can do this or not would probably become obsolete, because a lot of what we're doing in a school is also social. You like coming to school because you see your friends. You're learning with friends. You come here, I come here because I see my colleagues. You know, I'm doing this work with colleagues. So I think it would become better, but some of it is convenience. Like the podcast we're doing right now, it would have been very hard to share that information with people if we hadn't had this avenue of doing it. So yeah, I think there are benefits, but there are disadvantages, and I think only time will tell which way we're gonna go. But it's interesting. Let's see how things transpire.
Yeah, I really want to see in 10 years what would happen. We'll reflect back on this conversation at some point. So in your opinion, are there any specific specialties that will be more impacted by automation than pros?
I feel, according to what I'm seeing right now, implant placement is probably going to be replaced by robotics in the very near future. I would say, in my mind, in the next 5 years, robotic implant placement will become a standard. I mean, I don't see why. It's going to be more reliable and cheaper for practitioners. I mean, if you have 5 robots that are placing implants, it's much cheaper than if you had to do these 5, because you could do all 5 at the same time if you have robots, but you can't do all 5 at the same time if you're doing it on your own. So just like the transition into milling. So milling crowns is so popular because of how efficient it is. Back in the day where all we could do is build a crown by hand. If you're a technician, you can only do 1 crown at a time. But now with milling, you put them all in a puck and you mill them all at the same time. So that day that you used to take a day to do 5 crowns, now you're doing 50. So it is just a viable option. And that's going to be the same thing with implants. So from my perspective, I see the soonest or the most clear way to advance is robotic implant placement, for sure. I feel like the next thing to be done would be diagnosis of radiographs. Again, using machine learning. There's so much work being done on this right now, and that's going to eventually happen. Diagnosing lesions, both in medicine and in dentistry, there's just so much advancement in this field, and eventually it's going to happen.
Yeah. So what an advice you would give to students who are still in dental school right now? How can they think about their future? Like, how can they adjust? What can we do now?
I feel like, again, learn as much as you can. I feel a lot of the time, and it doesn't really matter what you're learning, as long as you learn from every situation that you encounter. Because, again, a lot of students get lost into the idea of, I need to get the best grades that I can. And if you're focused only on the grades, somehow your brain doesn't focus on the learning. And you're just focusing on what can I do to get the maximum points that I can. So I would say the points and the grades, yeah, they might be important to get into grad school, but um, really the learning is the main jewel here. Learning the techniques, learning from your mistakes, learning from all the situations that happen around you. I think if you try to absorb as much as you can of every situation that happens, that's my advice to you. I mean, you can't control a lot of the information that's coming to you. I mean, you're being, given that information. But if you're open to all learning possibilities, good and bad, this will eventually help you in whatever field you get into later. And maintaining that learning attitude even after dental school is just essential, because things are advancing all the time. If you're not willing to learn, and if you're just looking at an efficient way of doing things and sticking to it, you're going to be left in the dust. So, but keeping an open mind of always learning, always looking at what's going on and learning from it, I think is an important trait. And if you're going to do it at any time, now is the best time to do it. You're in dental school. This is the time that you should be learning. So I definitely think that this is the best advice that I can give.
Yeah, thank you so much. So who are the most influential 3 people in your life? Who?
Oh, that's an easy thing to say. First, I think and foremost, my father and my parents. I mean, I would just say they have been, the founding people of myself. I mean, as a father too. Now I have a son. You just feel like you are creating that personality. You are telling them what is right, what is wrong, what are the things that you need to do, and what are the things that you shouldn't do. So, everything that I am, I attribute to my parents. They are the people that made me into who I am. And then again, very important person is Amira, my wife. A lot of the changes that I've made and the advancements that I've made in my life are really just from Amira. She has been my cheerleader, my consult, my everything really, for the last, even in dental school. We were together in dental school even before we were together, like actually together. We were friends, and even back then she helped me out a lot. And so I would say easily in the last 11, 12 years, Amira has been, I would attribute a lot of the successes that I made to her. And the last influential person that I think I would say is one faculty that has taught me here in University of Iowa. His name is Dr. Aquilino, and he's one of the most respected professors. And to me, he was also a very, generally speaking, he was a very, I would say, just strict and maybe a little aggressive. I don't know what the best way to say it. But a lot of people at face value would take it as a negative. But I tried to look past that, and inside he's an excellent teacher, and he gives all his energy to what he's doing. And again, he lives by these rules. And to me, I feel like the best trait that I learned from him is not being hypocritical. So you can preach something and then not do it. And I think this doesn't make sense if you do this. Like if I tell you, hey, you need to do this and this, and then I go and I don't do this, then you are not going to do it, because I'm the one who's telling you to do it, and I'm not doing this. So I feel like he actually does what he teaches. And to me, this was a very valuable lesson, because I thought that if I'm not physically able to do something, then I shouldn't teach it. And if I cannot do, or if I'm not convinced by what I'm teaching, then I shouldn't teach it. I can only teach something that I'm convinced with and that I can actually do. and know that it's successful. And so, when I do my lectures, when I teach anything, I really just, I reference the science because that's how I learned, but I also reference myself. If I cannot physically do these things, I will either say I can't or I won't say it, because again, I'll say I physically cannot do this.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So I promise, I think I took a lot of your time. It's almost 2:40. Sorry about that. I promise this is the last question. So where do you see yourself in 10 years? That's one of my friends, she sent me that. She wanted to ask you that question. So I'm gonna close with that.
Yeah, in 10 years, I feel like, I will probably still want to teach. I don't see myself doing anything other than teaching. I don't know where I will be, maybe here, maybe somewhere else, but either way, I feel like um, if I make the most out of every situation, and if I take the time and, in everything that I do, I feel like it doesn't matter where I end up, as long as it's somewhere that I had enjoyed the journey. And there was this is my last quote that I'll say, but again, a lot of these quotes really do influence your life. But one of the things that I had listened and it affected my personality was Sylvester Stallone. He had an interview one day, and that was years ago. And someone had asked him a similar question, and he said that you would look at life as this road, as this highway, and everyone's, in that road trying to go as fast as they can to reach their destination. But what they don't know is that highway is full of these little diamonds in the ground and these little gemstones that if you don't take your time to look for them, you are not going to see them. And this comes, if you've ever seen the movie Click, the movie Click, Adam Sandler shows, it really shows you how the journey is more important than the destination. So, if you've put a plan that I want to be there in 10 years or anywhere in 10 years, and you're just always focused on that goal, you're going to miss out on the real important things that happen in your day-to-day life. And, whether you get to that goal or not, you're going to regret not taking the time to spend and look for these little gems along the way. So I don't know where I'm going to be in 10 years, but I do know that I want to look for these gems in the old years. So,
well, that was a great answer. Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Dr. Mahrous, for doing this. I know how busy you are right now, especially at this time of the year. I wish you a happy holiday season and best of luck on the new baby.
yes,
Do we
yes,
know
anytime.
it's a boy or a girl?
It's a boy. It's a
Oh,
boy.
it's a
So
boy.
we're going to have
Two
more
boys.
incentive to ask for a bigger game room. So
Well, say hi to her, and I wish you best of luck, both of you. We
definitely.
love you so much. I know how it's students. We love the Christmas card that you sent us.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was lovely. Yeah,
Glad,
thank you so
glad.
much.
Yeah, definitely.